Hello, welcome to Wheat State Wool. I'm Sarah. Today's video is all about the very basics of crochet. So let's get started. But before we do, please make sure that you hit the like button, the subscribe button, and click the little bell icon to be notified every time I upload a new video. Let's jump right in. So the first things you will need, these are all the basics. Any kind of scissors, like really any kind of scissor. Most of us tend to go with these smaller ones so that they're not these big giant things sitting around taking up a bunch of space. This is cute. It was only like $5 or $6 on Amazon. This is a Fiskars. You can't really see light. There we go. It's super sharp. These actually got dull after 3 or 4 years of use, which is still pretty good for $5, you know. This came with a kit, and this also came with a kit, and I don't know, it's awkward to me, but some people really love these. So just to show you those kinds of things, this is a really cool doodad. It looks like a watch. Slide it onto any finger as you're crocheting, turn it on, and you can see that it's a stitch counter or a row counter, and the little button resets it. And this one counts it. So each time you finish a certain stitch or a certain row, press, come on, there you go, press the button, and it keeps track for you. I'm right-handed, so I tend to put it on this finger, crochet, hit with my thumb, crochet, hit with my thumb, and so on. So again, reset, and it shuts off on its own. These came in like a pack of 3. You can also get them in singles or just doubles from Amazon, once again. And if I can remember, I will try to put some links in the description box below for some of these things. Next up, of course, you're going to need some darning needles or large eye blunt needles. The bent ones are better. I don't have one handy, but this is a perfect example of a large eye blunt needle. These are for sewing in your ends. You're going to need at least one. You're probably going to need more based on the size of yarn and the project you're working on. This is a pretty large-ish shaft one. So for smaller, thinner projects, you're going to want something obviously smaller. But keep in mind that the smaller this is, the smaller this part is too, and the harder it is to get your yarn in. But there is a trick to it, and I'll show you. So next is another handy doodad for a finger. You put this on your finger like so, and then you can trap your yarn in it, and it's a tension holder, and it really traps the yarn in. So sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't, just depends on how I feel. It has a little adjustable opening, so it doesn't matter how fat or skinny your finger is, that's the way it works. Some people put it on this way. It really doesn't matter. Okay. Next up, we have these. These are stitch markers, locking stitch markers. I highly, highly, highly recommend these. The kit I bought was a circular deal, and it has several little doors on it, little hatches, so to speak, and it was color coded, so like all the blues and all the yellows and purples and pinks were all together, and so you had like the rainbow of colors, and there was like, I want to say 50 or 75 or some odd number like that of these, and I think I've got like 12 left. They're sitting in some project or some corner or some cushion of my couch, but I'll just buy another pack, to be honest. I don't want to go hunting. So, because they're cheap too. It's like $5, $6 again for that big circular thing. So I highly recommend these. These are great for marking where your end stitches are, or they're really good for when you're kind of done working on a project for now. You can take your hook out, slip this in your working loop, and then lock it, and then it can't come undone. So I very, very, very highly recommend these. Next up, of course, you're going to need a hook of some kind. It doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be a furls, which is quite expensive and lovely. I have several myself. It doesn't have to be a Susan Bates or a boy. It could be any or all. I actually have all. I'm kind of a hook and yarn junkie. I'm anything crochet junkie. So this is a Prim, P-R-Y-M. These my husband got for me for Christmas. And this is a number 7 in the US. This is a 4.5 millimeter. They're very lightweight. This is a wonderful non-slip, semi-cushioned grip. It is really nice, so no matter how you hold it, it's going to feel comfortable. And again, it's super lightweight, so it doesn't feel heavy and tiresome in your hand. And it's fat enough, just fat enough to kind of break up your grip. And this being soft, you know, the way I hold it like a knife, this butt hits me here. It's not leaving a permanent indent. The hook side of it is very, very much like a furls, which is a combination of inset and taper, because you can see it's kind of both. I really like that. It makes it a kind of a smoother transition inset. I love the inset, but the taper is smoother in certain cases. You need that. And it's got a really good point. So like the furls, Prims, and I want to say there's some other one. No, not off the top of my head. Clover hooks are really good. They are a little more tapered and a lot rounded, more rounded top. Susan Bates, boy, they're all good. They all have some kind of ergonomic handle, or you can just start out with some straight off aluminum hooks. These are actually quite affordable per hook. They're only like a few dollars. So it's as affordable as the straight aluminum with nothing on it hook. So I do recommend the Prims. You can also get them on Amazon or Michaels. Okay, and last, of course, not least, you need yarn. Now this happens to be a skein that a good friend of mine from Sunflower Cottage, Helen, gave me from the UK. It's a Women's Institute DK, which is double knit, which is lightweight number 3 yarn. And there are different weights of yarn, and I will show you that in just a moment. All right, before you see 3 strands, 2 of them look almost the same and 1 of them is clearly different. So remember, this was the number 3 lightweight yarn. Sometimes it's called Sport, most of the time it's called DK, or light worsted even. But just know the number is what stays the same, and that's 3. This is a 3 weight. This is a 4 weight, the most common, often referred to as medium, worsted, or Aran. And it is slightly thicker than the 3 weight, just ever so slightly, but it's enough to make a big difference in your project. This is a 5 weight yarn. Not only is it 5 weight, but it was spun differently. So it's kind of a roving with a thinner strand wrapped around it. But this is a 5 weight yarn. They call this chunky, bulky, depends on where you're from. But the number again is the same. It is a 5. So as you can see, all 3 strands up close, there is a difference. So today I'm going to work with the 3 weight yarn and a 4.5 millimeter hook. Normally you might use a 4 millimeter. This was the closest one I had around. Start over. So today we're going to use the number 3 DK weight yarn and my 4.5 millimeter hook. You can use a 4 mil, you can even use a 5 millimeter hook. Again, whatever the yarn ball says to use. But to get started, I actually already attached my yarn. I wanted you to see how it's going to look on the hook when you just start to work with it. But now I'm going to show you how to do that. But I also want to go over holding your hook. Now this is called the pencil hold. And actually a lot of times people hold it down here. So it's just like, you know, you're writing your name. You know, you might come back, instead of choking up so much, you might come back on it a little bit to work with. And so when you're working with the yarn, this is the wrist motion. I'm going to try and get my wrist further in there that you're doing. It is pretty wristy. as I like to call it. I hold the yarn in the knife hold, like I'm cutting a piece of chicken or steak or something, okay? So that's the knife hold. And so as you can see, this is just kind of how I grip it. And a lot of people, even when you're doing this, they use their middle finger for the pencil hold and the index finger for the knife hold to sort of, it's your yarn loop guider and holder. So now the next step is, once you kind of figure out, hold the hook in your hand and see what feels good. And technically both of them feel good in your hand, but whatever feels like you might have more control with. And for me, it's the knife hold. And for people like Marley Bird, it's the pencil hold. Figure out which one feels like you have the best control and stick with it, because you're going to need to be consistent in practicing to get to where you're good. So now we're going to take the yarn and do a slip knot. And that's how you get started with most projects. So the first thing to do is you need the end of your yarn, of course. And I like to do it this way because it gives me more yarn to work with. Instead of working on such a tiny spot, we're working over a couple of fingers. So I will lay this yarn strand, about this much of it, over my index and middle fingers. And then I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to flip my hand over and wrap around the front. And as I come back underneath, I'm going to cross over that first strand and make an X. Now I'm going to pinch where that X is and let this yarn now wrap behind the first strand that I did. And now I'm holding it with this finger over here so it doesn't go anywhere. Then I'm going to take my hook and go under the first strand and then grab over top the second one, pull it out from under. And then this is where that finger comes in. Then I can slide my hand out. And I'm holding on to it here. Then I'm going to pull the short tail so the knot is tight. So this is now called the tail. And the part that is still attached to the ball, all of this mess, is called the working yarn. Now I'm going to pull the working yarn so that that tightens up on my hook. And I'm going to get my tail out of the way. And then I'm going to sort of thread the yarn through my fingers for tension. You don't want it super tight, but you definitely don't want it loose. And I'm going to grab my yarn to start working a chain. So, but before we work a chain, how in the heck did I weave this yarn through? Well, it's hard in the slow-mo, but there it is. You could do like this: under the pinky, over the ring, under the middle, over the index. Most people do over the index and let their index finger fly way out up here, which I do. Some people wrap twice to get even more tension. Some people wrap a whole bunch of times when they're doing the chain and they just let those fall off as it gets higher up. So they just have a little more control. Whatever works for you is what's best. So weave it in. Some people just hold it like this and then bring it over. If that works for you, great. Some people wrap it around their pinky a couple times, go underneath all the rest, and then come over. It really just depends on the person. I like to weave under, over, and then to keep this finger up so that this tension stays the same, I pinch with my thumb and middle finger on the knot to hold things in place, and this also helps to hold the tension here. And if I want to loosen up, I may just hang on to the tail, or I may just let it go a little bit, but mostly I really don't let it go. So that's how we're holding the hook and the yarn and the slip knot, getting it on there. Now we need to learn how to work a chain. But first, I think you should practice doing the slip knot and holding your hook and weaving your yarn through your fingers for that tension. I think those things are highly important for your success in crochet. in general. Now that you've practiced all of your slip knots and your tension holding and your hook holding, let's finally work a chain. So hopefully you're already still hooked up and ready to work. Now again, remember, I like to pinch my knot here to help hold things in place. If you don't, it's going to be impossible because it's just going to swirl around the hook. So help yourself have less of a headache and hold this knot. You don't have to like death grip it, just kind of hold it, okay? All right, so now to work a chain stitch, we have things called, or techniques called, yarn over and yarn under. For chaining, you yarn over your hook. What I mean by that is, you see I'm holding the hook so that the actual hook part, this inset part, is facing me, up at me, okay? And the yarn essentially is going to go over. And you could just wrap like that. If you're a knitter and you're used to doing that, wrap it just like you would for knitting. Then help that yarn slide up into the hook, just kind of naturally, don't force it. Then you can twist your hook so that it's facing down as it goes through the loop. And that's it. That's your first chain. So again, I'm going to, you can wrap it like this if you want, but I usually scoop it and then pull that through the loop that is on your hook. So the way I just did it, instead of moving my hand, I just moved the hook, and there's very little wrist movement involved. So to yarn over, I'm going to hook under, right? So I'm going under the strand to get the yarn over the hook. And you see how it just kind of naturally slides in to the hook part. And as I pull through, I'm going to turn down my hook and pull it up through and out. And now I have worked 4 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it again. And now also, I'm no longer holding down here. I'm going to choke up each time for a while until I feel like I'm good at letting so many stitches go. So I'm going to scoop it up again, turn it down, pull it through and up, and do the same thing over and over. Again, you can wrap and do this. If that's what you're comfortable with and you're used to, it's fine. Again, whatever works for you is the best. So, but I like to do it this way. So I'm going to use this finger, I hold on to the loop, and I'm pinching down here, and I'm going to go under the strand and hook it in my hook there, and then hook. I'm going to turn the hook downward, but I still have a decent amount of tension here. And I'm going to pull through that loop, out and up. And that is how you work a chain. So the first thing that all crocheters learn after the slip knot is how to make a chain. Remember to move your holding hand, your tension hand, up a little bit as you go. Do a couple, come up, do a couple, come up. And the chain will be the first main thing you do. And honestly, just keep working the chain. Just keep going and going and going. And you might have a mile-long chain. But if that's what it takes for you to get comfortable in your chains to where they're not either all loosey-goosey or stupid tight, then that's what it takes. Do that for a while, and then come back and watch the next video where you will learn how to do the single crochet. And I will see you in that one. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe and hit the little bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.